You're listening to the Journey to Launch podcast, how Carmen Perez paid off $57,000 of debt in 2.5 years and switched careers from corporate to coding.
T-minus 10 seconds.
Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast with your host, Jamila Souffrant. As a money expert who walks her talk, she helps brave journeyers like you get out of debt, save, invest, and build real wealth. Join her on the journey to launch to financial freedom in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, journeyers. I am, as I always am, excited for you to be joining us today. So whether you're new or a returning journeyer, I think you're going to really love this story. Before we hop into the episode, let me tell you about today's sponsor of the podcast, Empower. I know how much work it is to juggle career, family, and money management. Look, I get it. As a full-time entrepreneur with 3 small kids, a husband, and me trying to keep up my friendships, working out, and staying healthy, your girl is tired. Plus, let's not even add on the craziness of the financial markets right now. #tired and over it. Empower is an awesome app that gives you back your valuable time by making money management and saving the easiest thing you do all day while allowing you to take more control over your financial future. For starters, Empower has an automated savings feature. I simply tell the app my weekly savings target, and every day Empower studies my income and spending and automatically knows when to move the right amount of money into my savings account where it grows with unlimited withdrawals and no minimums. It's called autosave. Just set it and forget it. The app even tells me about upcoming payments that are due. So it's nice to have the app remind me because quite honestly, sometimes with my schedule, I forget. Yes, even me, Jamila, your chief launch officer, needs a reminder when a bill is due. I'm guessing you can use that kind of help too. Now, Empower has a nice human touch because let's face it, sometimes you need to talk to real living, breathing people for guidance. So just text Empower's human coaches who are on standby to share personalized recommendations and steer you through whatever financial questions that come up. If you want to save more than ever before, you got to check out Empower's app. Download Empower in the App Store or Play Store. I did, and over 650,000 other people have too. And for listeners of this show, that's journeyers, get $5 when you use the code JOURNEY and reach your savings goal. Visit empower.me/journey for more details. That's Empower, EMPOWER.me/JOURNEY for more details. Today I'm interviewing Carmen Perez. Carmen Perez is of Make Real Sense. That's her Instagram. That's her blog name. And I'm really inspired by Carmen. She was originally on the podcast when I had my Colors of FI Roundtable chat a few episodes ago. I'll link that in the show notes if you want to check it out. But I just had to have Carmen come back on for her own solo episode. So not only has Carmen paid off $57,000 of debt in a little over 2.5 years, but one of the things that really, when I saw that she did this, I was like, I got to get her on the show, is she switched careers. She went from corporate where she was earning 6 figures and doing really well for herself. She quit her job to start coding boot camp. So she wanted to become a coder. And she switched careers, went to coding boot camp, and now she's a coder. And I just feel like this is the kind of things dreams are made of, and it's a reality. And Carmen made it a reality for herself. So if you are listening and thinking to yourself, I picked the wrong career, or I feel stuck, I'm not happy, what can I do about it? Then you have to listen to this episode with Carmen. As always, don't forget to take a screenshot that you're listening on your phone or however you consume the content and share it with me on social media. Tag me at Journey to Launch on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And then just tell me what a takeaway is or what you're enjoying about the show. And tag Carmen too at Make Real Sense on Instagram. That's where she hangs out the most. If you want the episode show notes for this episode, go to journeytolaunch.com, or you can click the description of wherever you're listening to this episode to get the full episode show notes. Now, if you are a new listener to the podcast or an OG journeyer, I've created a jumpstart guide to help you on your journey to financial freedom. It includes the top episodes to listen to, the stages to go through to reach financial freedom, resources to help you, and so much more. Get it for free by texting LAUNCH to 33777. Text LAUNCH to 33777 or go to journeytolaunch.com/jumpstart to get your guide for free right now. Okay, let's hop into the episode. Hey, Journeyers. I'm really excited to have back on someone who was on the podcast already, but she did not have her feature interview. So she deserved her own spot. She was on the Roundtable discussion that I did back episode 85. Carmen Perez from Make Real Sense. Hi, Carmen.
Hey, guys. Hey, everyone.
So I am super excited to have you on because you know that we've been like finance friends and like following each other online and supporting each other's work. And I am really excited about all you've accomplished, like paying off debt. And most recently, like your pivot from your corporate job to, you told me to call it software engineer. I was going to call it, say coding. I don't know much about terminology, but I find I've been asked questions like that a lot. Like especially when I talk about like these alternative careers that people can do and how like, you know, anything in the tech world can be lucrative. And people always ask, okay, I'm already doing this. How do I switch to that? And you've done it. And so I want to definitely walk through all of that.
Yeah.
Can you just like let people know who, if they don't know who you are, your personal finance journey? So you paid off a lot of debt, your kind of background, like where did you start to get bit by the personal finance bug?
Yeah. So back in 2016, I like to tell everyone that I was terrible with personal finance. My degree and background is in finance. I've worked in the finance industry for roughly 10 years. And majority of that time I spent was just terrible in finance. I had bad credit. I had very little saved. I got sued for my student loans. And in 2016, I decided to try to turn that all around and work on getting debt free so I could open up my options and figure out what I wanted to do next in life, because I knew finance was just not going to be like my end goal. So 2016, started trying to get out of debt, got sued for my student loan, hustled as hard as I could to pay that off. And over the course of 2 years and 9 months, paid off $57,000 of debt, just busted butt to get that done. And that was a large part of my journey. It took 2 years and 9 months to complete. And then that's when I switched focus and started grinding it out with saving to quit.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to take it back because when you say you got sued for your student loan, like I feel like, okay, like what happened there and how much was that? Because there may be some people listening like, wait, can I get sued for my student loan? Like what, like what led you to that predicament? And I do want to go back into your like education history because I think it's not uncommon that people who are good with numbers, like on paper and like got degrees are not good personally. So I want to talk about that too. So first let's talk about the student loan.
Yes. The short answer, you absolutely can get sued. I had a private student loan, pseudo-private student loan. I defaulted on it while in school. So they defaulted me while I was still a full-time student. And there was a whole thing around that, but that's not what this show's about. So long story short is it defaulted and really, really had an impact on my credit that ended up hurting me as far as being able to get a job. I had an offer rescinded from a large investment bank because of my credit and because of having that defaulted student loan status on my credit report. So fast forward a couple of years up until 2016, right before I had gotten sued, that default was on my record for quite some time at this point. So I graduated in 2009, and then that default had carried up all the way until 2016. And at some point in between that time period, I kind of poked the bear. So resetting the clock on the statute of limitations and all that stuff for this loan, I maybe paid like $100, $200 here and there, but it was defaulted. And I got really overwhelmed by that. And in 2016, they sent me a notice. It was a complaint, actually. That was like the start of the lawsuit. Like, you need to respond to this. And I remember opening the envelope and like literally shaking because I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a lot of money saved. I think at this point, maybe I had less than $3,000 in my account, and the loan amount was for $30,000 and some change. And I went on Google, of course, Google University, and it basically was like, oh, this is how lawsuits start. Is you have to answer this complaint and go from there. So what ended up happening is I had to get a lawyer, which was even more money I didn't have at the time. And I think this actually was close to like tax season, and me getting a bonus from work. So it actually worked out nice because then I used that money that I got for a bonus to get a lawyer, to be able to buy me some time, to be able to pay this student loan off. And ended up happening over the course of a year and a half. She bought me a year and a half in time just because there was a lot of issues with them defaulting me while I was still in school. There was a lot of legal stuff that they shouldn't have done. So that afforded me enough time to be able to save money to pay it off.
Yeah. So what field were you working in at that point?
So at that point, I was in finance. I did have a job. I was working right down in the financial district in New York City and was making good money. I can't complain about the money that I was making. When I had first moved to New York City, I worked for one bank. Moving from Florida, I was making $50,000. And then in less than a year transition over to New York City, I had a starting salary of $80,000. And then it just went up from there while working in the city. So there's definitely a big cost of living difference. I was making $50,000 for 3 years in Florida. And then overnight went to $80,000 living in a 4-bedroom apartment in Harlem, paying $900 for my room and rent.
Right. So during this transition of you earning more money, how were you personally with money? So you got a degree in finance, you worked in finance, and then now you are managing this money. So you got such an increase. How did that come into play with like being able to manage the day-to-day stuff and any debt that you had?
Oh, yeah. So I think that's like the big misconception. I think a lot of people think that, she has a degree in finance or accounting, she must be good at it. It's kind of one of those do as I say, not as I do. Even with financial advisors, I've heard some crazy statistic where, some of them haven't even traded on their own accounts or are managing their own investment accounts in a positive manner. So when I was, moved to New York, wheeling and dealing, you're young and it's a new city and you have this bigger salary. To be honest with you, I was still borrowing money from my friends. I was going on trips. I was just not doing what I needed to do with my money. Long story short, I was terrible at it. That's why, in 2016, that's when I decided, hey, I have to be an adult about this and turn my situation around.
So what was it exactly? And I know part of it was getting sued, right? That's when you first found out you were getting sued. But like because you could have just kept your head down and was like, look, I'm just going to continue and enjoy my life. What made you really get serious about it?
I think I started identifying this weird habit of like, you don't have to be in this weird struggle all the time. I was fortunate enough to have a choice because I was making good money and in a place with so many opportunities. It's just one of those things like I'm choosing to live paycheck to paycheck. I don't know why I'm doing that. And I don't know what patterns there were in my background that maybe helped me identify that. But I had some clarity moment where it was just a matter of like, why are you choosing to do this? Why are you choosing to put the stress on yourself constantly, day in and day out, borrowing money, having this bad credit and being okay with that? And I think in 2016, I don't know what it was that sparked it. I think Mr. Money Mustache, it was like this guy that, retired at 30. That was super inspiring. And here I am making more money than he was, I think I don't know, towards the end of his career, but making more money or at least having some to be able to do something about my current trajectory. So I think 2016 was just like, look, I need to do something. I got inspired by his story and then all these other money stories with financial independence and all that stuff and got really motivated and wanted to just change this struggle of, always living paycheck to paycheck to like really having something to fall back on and feel comfortable and have the security under me.
Right. So at this point, how much debt were you in completely? Was it mostly the student loans or did you have some credit card debt? What were you kind of digging yourself out of?
Jamila, I had it all. I had collections accounts. I had an auto loan that I need to finish paying off that I was paying 18.5% interest on because I had terrible credit cards and just things in collection. Majority of the debt, the $57,000 was student loans, but I had all different kinds of accounts.
Okay. So when you got inspired by Mr. Money Mustache and seeing other people, like that's the thing too, like before you don't know and then you like wake up, you're like, wait, this whole world existed. Like it was in parallel. It almost seems like it was like another world, but it like was existing. You just didn't know about it. You're just like, cause I feel like that happened to me too. I'm like, where the hell was all of this all along? Like, but it was right there. You just, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You know, I love saying, because sometimes things are like right in your face, but you're just not interested because you're not ready to take that information. So when you did wake up, what were your first steps? Like what did you start to do?
So the first thing is I put a budget in place, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like, you know, I've read all these books and I love reading. I'm such a big fan of reading. I'd read all these personal finance books and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do a budget. And it looked like a hot mess. It was just, if I go back in the archives and just show you, I could show you photos of what it looked like. It just looked a hot mess. I didn't know what I was doing. My thing was I tried to do a budget, and then I tried to like organize my debt in a way that I could start paying this off. And at first I was just throwing any amount of money that I could towards any debt, and it just didn't matter. I had no organization around it. And then it slowly transitioned into, okay, I have a name for my budget and I have some framework that I can use. It's a zero-based budget. So I started putting that in place. That gave me a little more guidance around my money.
So for anyone who doesn't know, explain what a zero-based budget is.
Okay, so a zero-based budget is basically like you sitting down, taking all of your take-home income before it even hits your account and allocating each dollar of that paycheck to a budget category until you spend every single dollar on paper. And then when it hits your account, you know exactly where your money's going because you've already written down this spending list. That's what I like to say. For people that don't like it to call it a budget, I say spending list because it literally is a list of items that you're going to spend your money on. And it makes you really intentional. So I put a zero-based budget in place and started working off of that and carrying that around and then taking pictures of it just so I can have it on my phone when I went to go spend money, just so I can have the guidance. And then I went and found out that there was methods and ways that you could pay back your debt. Some of the most commonly known terms, debt avalanche and debt snowball. And that gave me a little more framework and structure around how to pay back my debt. For those of you that don't know, the debt avalanche is organizing your debts from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate, regardless of how much you owe, and then tackling it that way. The debt snowball, on the other hand, is not mathematically sound, but it's for those people that like the small wins. It caters more to people that just have it in their personality type to stay with stuff when they are constantly getting wins. So the debt snowball is when you organize paying off your debt, smallest debt to largest debt, regardless of interest rate. So you tackle that first debt by putting all the money that you can towards that while paying minimums on all of your other debt. And then once you pay off that smallest debt, you roll in all that money that you're paying to that debt up to the next debt and so on and so forth. So I put those two things in place and then added the cash envelopes, which is like the Dave Ramsey system. A lot of people use it. And that's when I really started feeling the momentum.
At that point when you got serious, did you foresee like how long it will take you? Did you say it's going to take me 4 years based on if I stick to this plan, or did you not know yet?
I would say like maybe 6 months in, that's when I started tackling more of that. Like first I had to get consistent with my habits and like figuring that out. But then I started trying to do projections on how fast I could pay it off. And I think my original projection was like 3.5 years. And then obviously the student loan that I had to pay back sooner rather than later. I had no idea, you know, because I was just buying time at this point. There was no set like, oh, you have a year to pay this back. No, it just got a little convoluted. But yeah, I think my original projection was like 3.5 years.
Yeah. And I asked that for people who are listening and have debt and, you know, a good amount of debt where it may take them some time. Like there's so many calculators and I'll link some to the show notes here. Even if you're just sitting down and putting down like how much you can afford to pay and then playing around with that 4 years versus if you cut out these things or increase your income, like it could take you 2 years, like that kind of helps motivate you because when it is a big balance and, you know, you're only putting a couple $100 maybe a month, like it kind of seems like this is going to be forever. What's the point? But when you see like, oh no, like if I do these things, this can speed up the process. So what were some of the things that you actually did? What habits did you change? What things did you have to now stick to be able to hit your goal?
Yeah, so definitely the zero-based budget. Like I can't stress that enough that it looked like a hot mess in the beginning and now I can do it with my eyes closed. It just takes like a lot of time to get used to. But there's other budgeting methods out there, but I do think the budget was literally the biggest tool that helped shift my whole financial trajectory. The second thing was we cut expenses, we meaning me, my wife. So we cut cable, we cut down our traveling a lot. So if we did any travel, majority of it was done through like just reward points that I had from a previous job. When I did consulting, I racked up a lot of points for hotels and flights and all that stuff. So we cut cable, we cut travel for the most part. We also cut our food down. So we were doing a lot more meal prep, just a lot less eating out and figuring out that the food can just take the most money, and that could be the easiest place to start cutting. So that was just one. And I'm a vegetarian, so it already makes it a little bit easier, our food budget. We made sure that we kept our rent. Lifestyle inflation didn't kind of creep in. So we made sure our rent was under 25% of our take home, which was a really big thing in New York City. I think we're taxed so high, you have to figure out how to, maximize your money after that tax, right? After that 30% and plus tax rate that we're hit with. I also got a side hustle, and I had a few. So I did photography. I started my blog, was making money off of that, did VIP kids here and there when I could, but definitely like the photography was one of the biggest things. I would just go on different photo shoots for friends, trying to pick up extra cash through that. I started like a little page so I can start like making money from that, and then my blog. And then any refunds that I received, which you shouldn't be, but yes, back then when I was terrible with money, that's something that's a real thing. And I say you shouldn't be because, everyone knows that if you are giving the government, your money throughout the year and not receiving interest on it, you could be making it somewhere else. So that's why I say the closest you are to zero, the better, but it happened. So any refunds or bonuses I got went straight to that. So those are the biggest things I did. And then obviously the cash envelope system from my zero-based budget, cash envelopes being anything within that zero-based budget that I said, I can pull out cash for and leave everything else in my bank account for auto bills. I pulled out the cash, put them into different envelopes. Once I spent all of the cash in the envelope, say it would be for food for the month, that was it. I had to figure it out and get creative.
Yeah. And I think the cash envelope system is good for people who are just really starting. If you stick to it and not cheat and go back to your bank account, you really literally if you're going to the grocery store and you're using this cash envelope, you have this much to spend. You cannot go over, you can't leave the store. You don't have the money. So I think that's good for some people. Now, when you talk about getting, you and your wife seem to make these changes together, how was it for her? was she already in tune to this stuff, or did you have to convince her about these changes that you guys are making about traveling and food and all that?
Yeah. So I this is always an interesting question because she came with a little bit of debt, but I always just not a little bit. She paid off and had her own journey a lot more prior to when we had started dating and then obviously got married. But by the time I was in the thick of this, she was already, debt free and had the savings in place to be able to pay off her stuff. So that was done for her. Then it was this whole moment of okay, well, I still have a couple years to go. So I need you to come on this journey with me. And she was more than happy. I had to reiterate a couple of things here and there, but for the most part, I think she was a great trooper throughout the entire process. And it's tough too, because you also not only have to get your spouse or your partner on board. If you're single, it's sometimes your friends on board with this whole journey, whether it be the FIRE journey or becoming debt free. The people around you have to kind of rally with this idea or they're not going to have any fun and they may rain on your parade as far as reaching your goals are concerned.
Yeah, definitely. And same with family, right? The more people you have in real life that get it and they can support you, the better.
Yeah.
One of the things that you did, so I remember following you and I saw sometimes you'd post because you were working full time in the financial services industry, right? And then I would remember you posting some stuff about learning how to code on the side. You were saying, I did this project. You were creating websites, I think. And I'm that's an interesting side thing just to do for the fun of it. And then come to find out, you made this big announcement that you were quitting your job to enroll in school. So I want you to talk about that journey because I get so many people who ask about how to pivot in a career. Maybe they're not happy or they just want different opportunities. You did it. You pivoted, you saved up money. So I do want to talk about that journey and what that can look like for someone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the FIRE journey, just to go back to the root of it, inspired all of this because I realized getting out of debt was going to be the first step in order to achieve financial independence and then also just free up my options. And financial independence can look like a lot of things to different people. And the biggest things for me was, maybe I can quit my job because I just don't really care for finance anymore. This isn't like a place that I want to be in anymore.
Corporate finance, like
corporate finance.
Someone else. And I do want to note that FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retire Early, which is what I feel like we all are kind of on a journey on, even if we don't know it yet. So you're talking about being ignited by this like idea that you could literally choose what you wanted to do for work without being held down by a job, right?
Yeah, that was like the Mr. Money Mustache was one of the people that kind of inspired this journey. It's like, there's people that are retiring early and they're just doing whatever they want to do. Like, I need to get on board, but it's going to take me a while because I got to get out of debt first and then figure everything else out. So got out of debt. And then I knew, like you had said early on, I started before I was even out of debt. I was like, I know what I'm going to do next. I know what I want to pivot to, and I can start. The closer I got to debt freedom, the more my options started opening up and my vision just got so much clearer around what I wanted to do next.
How did you know what you wanted to do? Because I think that's another question people have. It's just like, what do I choose?
For me, to be honest, like I just saw the writing on the wall. Like I love finance. It's something that if I could just study it night and day, I love it. The industry, I love finance in theory, but in practice, it's a little different, right? The industry can kind of beat you up. But through that lens of just looking at finance, you look at the New York Stock Exchange and you can see old pictures of how much the floor has changed since, the 70s and 80s. There's hundreds of people on the floor. And now slowly but surely you see this trickle. And this is specific to, kind of my path. So forgive me for this, but you see this trickle down to fewer and fewer people on the New York Stock Exchange. If you watch, you see the exchange or the ringing on the bell. They try to make it look really busy, but it's actually, there's not a lot of people anymore because there's this wave of technology that has taken over the industry, especially in finance. So I started seeing that the writing on the wall, always been good at Excel, always loved like the nitty gritty details of numbers and just different things and building access databases and all that stuff. It just was a natural thing for me to just say, why didn't I ever consider, software or computer programming? And then again, I just saw that writing in the wall in the industry and I said, hey, I think that's my next move. But before I do that move, and I want to feel confident in my next move and not be stuck doing something that I didn't want to for the next 10 years of my life, let me start trying this out. So getting up super early in the morning and just started coding and teaching myself HTML and then working through like CSS and taking all these free courses online. There's plenty of resources to learn how to code. And the cool thing about the industry is you also don't need a degree in it. You just need to be able to know how to code, know these different data structures, different languages. The sky's the limit. So I started with HTML and CSS, which is pretty basic, but that's when you would see me in the morning posting, hey, I'm coding at 5 a.m. before I went to work. And I really, really started like developing a love for it and did that for almost a year, doing that in the morning, learning how to code. And then that's when I had said, this is for me. I knew a couple of weeks in, but I said, this is for me. This is what I want to do. This is the goal that I'm going to save for next, is to quit so I can do a career transition and have enough money in the bank to feel comfortable to be able to do that. So got out of debt, saved as much money as I could, and then leaped on the opportunity, which it also like set me up in a right way to leap on the opportunity when it came up, which was to be able to go to coding school for free.
Yeah. So I definitely want to talk about that. Is how did you decide how much you needed as a buffer as to give you that runway to do that?
Oh, that's a great question. So when I had said, I can now do my budget and, with my eyes closed, I literally sat down, did a projection budget over the course of like the next year and just saw how much, if I could kind of cut a few areas, how much I could actually put away to be able to save as much of a buffer as possible. So I had a goal in mind. I did bare bones expenses for the month and try to set my minimum for 6 months to save for that particular goal. So 6 months worth of expenses. That would give me enough time to go to a 3-month coding boot camp and then time to find a job, I thought, right? But that was just the goal. The aim was to just go much higher than that. Obviously, the bigger the runway, the better. So just literally calculated my bare bones monthly expenses, times that by 6. And I said, this is what I need to quit.
Yeah.
The minimum.
Yeah. So did you at that point start to like kind of calculate how much you could potentially earn? Like, so going to coding school, possibly paying for that. I know you just said you went for free, so we can talk about what that was like. But then was it going to be a big pay cut? How were you weighing this idea of quitting something you didn't love to do something you loved? And then the money, the loss of money in the interim from not working, and then possibly the difference of earning potential.
That's a great question, because me and my wife were actually talking about that the other day. And sometimes it's something that I kind of have a hard time reconciling still, but I'm getting much better at it, because I have this abundance mindset that no matter what, the money's going to make it back to me. And I always, whenever I start feeling this doubt, I always try to replace those doubts with that, like, more for anybody else doesn't mean less for me, and vice versa. With the pay, my whole mindset around that was, I'm leaving finance, and I feel like I've wasted the past 10 years, not wasted, but it hasn't been a great ride. Here we go. I love the people I work with, and not necessarily all the stuff that I was doing, but it hasn't been the greatest ride for the past 10 years while making great money and being really stressed. And now I'm looking on the horizon of like being in software engineering. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what that's going to look like from a pay perspective. But now that I've set myself up financially to be in the space where there's no debt except our mortgage, which we kept as low as possible for whatever reasons or whatever things are coming up on the horizon in life, to pivot from, finance to now software engineering, where I don't know what that pay is going to look like. I know eventually it's going to be a lot of money. It was a mindset. It's one of those things where you kind of identify. I know a lot of people in finance identify with their salaries, and that's a lot, like that's a big thing for them. And I think like going from finance and now making less than half of what I was making in finance, and something that took me 10 years to build up to, right? Because I just didn't get handed a really great salary. That took a lot of time and effort to, get to the level that I achieved in the corporate world. To just throw that all to the wind for the unknown was very tough. And I think a lot of people might be like, oh, that's, you're crazy. But I feel much happier. I can work from home. I wear jeans. My stress level is like non-existent now, except when all I'm doing is dreaming in code. So all of the pros definitely outweigh the cons, and I'm still making money, and it's not something where we feel like we're drowning, because I no longer have that salary that I did have, just because we set ourselves up for this financially in a very good way.
Yeah. And I love that. I love everything you said. I can relate to it so much, because I gave up a good salary and like a great career trajectory for the unknown also. And money can buy happiness to a certain point, but it's not the ultimate be all. What's helpful is when you have things set up where you're not worrying about money, like no debt and a support system or backup plans, right? So like if anything does happen, you have a support system that can like help you possibly, or, you don't feel all out there alone. And so I feel like that's why just starting the journey, which is, the goal of never having to work again because you have enough money invested and saved, is a very big one. But without paying off your debt and starting your journey and like getting things together, same with me, like I wouldn't have been able to take this leap.
Right.
And sometimes I say this can accelerate my path. Like I can actually reach there faster than I thought I could when I was working in the 6-figure job, because I'm happier. I'm living my like truth. Or it could delay it, but it's okay. Or it could never happen the way I thought it would. And that's fine, because at least I'm like happier.
Right. And like, you're doing what you want to do.
Yeah. All right. So talk about just now. So the coding. So I've had a couple episodes, and I'll link them, about alternative careers and education, because the way that we've been taught how to get our degrees and like making money right out of college, like it's totally different now. It's a new wave. Like you said, technology, AI, like that's all the wave. And so we have to get on board. So for you, when you started to look at coding schools, like how did you decipher which coding school? There are like tons of opportunities for that. And then how did you do it for free? What did that look like?
Yeah. So, I wasn't going to go back into debt. So that was, that was my biggest, like, can't do it, won't do it. So when I started researching coding schools, I was trying to figure out, one, what was going to be the cheapest route, what was going to allow me to be as focused as possible, because I also considered part-time. But word to the wise, I tried a 4-week part-time class after work. It was 2 days a week from 6 to 9. And it was very challenging to pick up coding, me personally. Some people can do that. My style, I had known that early on that doing a part-time program was just not going to work for me or get me to a coding job any faster than I wanted to. I started researching schools, one based on price, one based on their like jobs report. So I say that with air quotes because there are a lot of schools out there that will say that they've placed a lot of graduates at different companies and their numbers don't necessarily add up. So that's just really important. But also you have to know that you're risking the same thing than when you go to college and get a degree. You don't know if you're going to get a job right after that. Just something to be mindful of. So I looked at the job numbers, took it with a grain of salt, but it's somewhat seriously because obviously I only have 3 months runway after I get out of this full-time program. And then try to figure out if I could do it for free, if I was going to feel comfortable trying to go through a bunch of courses to be able to get this done, or if I actually really did have to go to a boot camp and if there was any scholarships or money available for me to be able to attend. So a lot of these boot camps offer scholarships for minorities, for women. I believe some offer for vets as well. So that's just something like really important to just look into if you're considering, for any of your listeners considering going to a boot camp. I ultimately decided on going to a boot camp. I said the only way I'm going to go is if it's free or if I can get like some massive discount. I ended up getting a lesbians in tech scholarship that paid for 50% of a boot camp of my choice. That was great until I couldn't get into the boot camp of my choice. I got rejected.
Oh no. Uh-huh.
And while that was happening, the universe heard me saying, hey, like I really don't want to go back into debt. I'm trying to change my life around. And an opportunity came up where if you were, me and my wife had just moved to Connecticut a year ago this month. And the opportunity came up where the Connecticut government was offering any residents of Connecticut an opportunity to go to this particular coding boot camp. I went to General Assembly because they wanted to, there's a whole government initiative to keep tech jobs here in the state of Connecticut. So that opportunity dropped in my lap. But Jamila, if I was not preparing and trying to save as much as possible, because it actually messed up my savings timeline. I mean, this was very tight. It actually took off 2 months. So I was caught in between, this 50% scholarship. I eventually got into the school that I was trying to get into. And then this free scholarship. And the free scholarship meant I was not going to have the runway that I wanted.
You had to wait longer to start?
Yeah, I would have to wait longer to start, which then I would miss the opportunity. But did I have most of it? Yes. I had 90% of, the money that I needed. And then on the flip side, I could have waited longer, taken this 50% scholarship, ended up coming out of school with a debt of $7,500 and only having to pay that back when I graduated, got a full-time job. But that would have meant paying for school and then transportation into the city. It's very expensive for me commuting from Connecticut to New York. For anyone that doesn't live in this kind of tri-state area, it costs, $600, $700 a month for a person commuting from Connecticut into the city where a lot of jobs are, right? So that would have been an extra cost, something that I wasn't preparing to save for, but I would have had more time to save. And, I took in all of these different variables and I went back and forth and finally said, you know what? I'm almost there with my goal as far as savings. I'm happy that I set myself up and was so determined to save as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. I'm going to take this leap and figure it out. So I went ahead and seized the opportunity that was free 99 for me to go to coding boot camp. And I stayed here in Connecticut and it worked out wonderfully because before I had even quit, I had a job. Before I finished school, I believe I was the first person in my class to have a job offer in hand, ready to go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So talk about abundance mindset and just like being just open to opportunity. So how did you find out about the Connecticut boot camp? Because I'm wondering like if people can start looking up if there are opportunities like that for them and wherever they live.
So my friend had said, hey, I'm looking at General Assembly. They have boot camps kind of everywhere in Denver. You should check this one out because again, I didn't get into my initial school the first time around. I actually got rejected and they said, hey, try again in a couple months. So while I was trying to figure out, okay, maybe another school that I'd be interested in, because I really, really wanted to go to this first school. Like, I don't know why, but I really wanted to. So my ego was busted up from that. So she said, check out this school. So I checked out this school, and I had actually went to an information session a while ago and completely forgot about it. Called up one of the admissions persons, and she said, oh, if you're interested in taking a full-time, we're offering it free for Connecticut residents because of this initiative, but you have to start in the class that starts in September. And again, that's what messed up the timeline. So really it was just by chance where, I started looking and trying to be open to other things. So I had this set path in my head and the way that I was going to get there, and it ended up shifting and looking completely different than what I had planned. But it turned out much better. So I can't orchestrate it better than the universe can.
Yeah. And that's what for everyone, sometimes the gift won't look like a gift. It comes in a different package than you think it will. Sometimes you may not even notice it, even if it seems like a setback or just a delay. And it's just no. I think I am one of those people that I really think even the bad things are part of it and help you learn. So how long did it take you to complete it? And then you said you got a job offer. So is it everything you dreamed of? Because, I think some people think okay, I want to do this different thing because it's going to be better. And then sometimes they are doing it and they're like, oh, this doesn't feel better. I feel the same, or it's not as great as I thought.
I love that. No, and just to go, that point is excellent, because I think that's why I'm such a planner. So that's why I wanted to make sure I really wanted to know if this was going to be for me. And I started doing that early on. Can I code for extended periods of time on a Saturday? Because that's what I try to mirror what I thought work might look like as a coder, to really see if I could do this. Can I code for 8 hours? Because then that means I really like it. If I can't, then this might not be for me and I don't want to waste my time. So I'll figure something else out. But so the coding boot camp was 3 months long. It was an intensive or an immersive course where we did 9 to 5, and then we had a lot of coursework outside. So basically every evening, 3 weeks in, we were building websites every single night. So a lot of time. It was very intensive. I was working on the weekends through coding stuff. And I can't tell you how many hours outside of the classroom. They say it's a very intense 3-month program for a reason, because you're just putting in so much hours. There would be nights, I'm up to 11, 1, 2, trying to get homework done for the next day because we're learning a new topic. So that was 3 months of, I got to chill on the weekends. Can't really do much because I'm having to do these lessons and get through this homework, plus 40 hours a week. So it was not walk in the park. It wasn't come in at 9 and leave at 5. People were coming in at 8, staying until 8, and then leaving and then going home and doing homework. Did that for 3 months. It was 12 weeks, 13 weeks program, a 12 and a half week program. And then on the last week, interviewed with a company. A lot of these boot camps, the cool thing about it is that if they have a good alumni program, other alumni are willing to reach out and tap you as a new student because they've gone through that same process and they know what it's like to change careers or to learn something new. And the cool thing about any of these boot camps is you have people from all different walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds. We have people, older folks at our cohort. That's what you call your class, down to, people that had just graduated or no degrees at all. So it was just a cool thing because you get to all these different backgrounds, and then they go on to get jobs, and then they, look back and see who can I help? Who can I bring out and get their first tech job? Because it actually is pretty hard to land your first job in the tech industry. And then once you do, then you're okay. So the cool thing is they went back and looked through our cohort and said, hey, I've seen this girl on Forbes.
It's because of your blog, because of Make Real Sense?
Yeah. So it was the person that hired me, he had seen my article and he had kind of seen my face. He remembers it. He was trying to put it all together and he goes, oh my goodness, she's an alumni from the school. I need to reach out to her. We actually had similar backgrounds. We actually at one point worked at the same investment bank. So he was like, look, we were both in finance. We dropped out of finance. We're Wall Street dropouts to go and code. And now I got to help you.
Right. Well, talk about the universe, God, aligning, and this is why, so you might have thought cause you said, I know you took it back, but you said for those 10 years, you felt like it was not your path. But it's like ironic because if you did not do that for those 10 years, you would not have gotten the opportunity now.
That was the best aha moment. Thank you, Jamila, for that. I have actually not put that together, and I appreciate you for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because that is 100% true. You kind of look back and think that it's a mistake. And then all of the things that I've done up until this point, even with not getting into the first coding boot camp, because I was really brokenhearted over that, he would have never, recognized me as an alum because that's not the school that he went to.
Yes.
Wow, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. And I challenge everyone, like everyone has this. It's not like I'm telling you, it's all weaving itself together for your purpose. Okay. So you now are working full time. You get this job. I don't know if you are comfortable with sharing, but like, what was like the pay cut? Like, what are you expecting? Cause I think some people think like, okay, maybe I like coding too, or I want to learn this. Like, what's the potential here for someone to think about like making a salary?
Okay, cool. So I'll give you the range. So in New York City, it's great. My salary for my actual first coding job is not bad at all. I'll give you a range though, 60 to 70,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. And I think now that I'm such like a big advocate of the coding boot camp is you can literally, even if you had to pay 15,000 for tuition, I left that out actually. Most of the coding boot camps, the average is 15,000 for 3 months. And most of these schools have programs where you don't have to pay that back until you get a job. If you can come out instead of being this young kid saying, I don't know if college is for me, I'm going to just try this coding boot camp and then try to get a job, you eliminate so much pain and heartache. And don't get me wrong, I think a CS degree is great. A computer science degree is great. And a lot of people actually want that and maybe even require it. There are jobs that are tangible and within reach for people that maybe college isn't, the traditional college route isn't for them. So you can invest 15,000 or what I like to say and come out on the flip side, making 70, 80, 90. Some of these job reports from these coding boot camps, 30% of their people come out making 120, 100,000. So, and this is across different regions. This isn't just New York City where those salaries are kind of, not expected, but they're a dime a dozen. I hate to say it for a majority of people, working with any career in New York City. It's a great place to figure out your income as far as like just being exponential. So that's the range I'm in right now. And the cut, again, we haven't felt much of an impact because we were already trying to reduce a lot of things and set ourselves up financially to be able to, maintain anything that kind of came our way. Even if we say, for instance, down the road want to have a child, prepare for that. So where maybe one of us can take off for a year, whatever that needs to look like.
This is just really helpful and lets someone see the possibility. So whether I always like to relay, if you maybe have a child that's more into tech and coding, like you don't have to go to undergrad with some of this stuff, right?
There's some companies, like big companies, they may want you to have a CS degree, but Elon Musk the other day, I don't know if you saw the post, but for Tesla SpaceX, he just wants you to know how to code. Doesn't matter what age, doesn't matter. And a lot of these brilliant coders that I'm seeing, they started touching code when they were 10, 7, 8, early on, and maybe never went on to get their CS degree. And if they did get their CS degree, it was just a nice compliment to their solid skill set already, where, they can come out of college and command large salaries and or not go the traditional route, maybe go to a boot camp to hone in their skills and then go from there and continue to self-learn and be self-taught and get these great salaries. So I think it's all just dependent on what's the best route for you. I wish I would have done maybe a CS degree or done a boot camp earlier.
Yeah, but I just think it's the courage to pivot, because some people like they have the idea that they want to do something, but they're afraid to take the pay cut or what the possibilities are, and to leave a sure thing, quote unquote, for an unknown, unsure thing is pretty scary. I'm just happy that you're able to share this. And you shared like the real of it too. It's work. It's not like it's just easy. I mean, depending on your passion for it, right? Like you can withstand it, but it's still going to be work. So I always say too, like, make sure you try to like talk to people doing the job you possibly want, or who's a little more steps ahead of you. So you can like really see what it's like versus maybe just the highlights that you see of just the good things.
Right. Instead of like the movies and the Facebooks and, like seeing all that. Cause that's what drew me into, finance. Cause I thought, it was going to be Wall Street and trading, and it was none of that. So I think it is very important to even ask mentors or shadow, like, hey, I'm looking to get into this. Can you give me the nitty gritty? Like, what are the good things? What are the bad things? What do you like most? What do you, can you connect me with other people? Even doing that on LinkedIn, to just get a good feel of what you're walking into before you take that leap. And I think honestly, that's the most responsible thing you can do, just to prepare yourself. Because again, you don't want to be looking to switch from one career and then get into another one. And like you said, just feel the same, if not worse.
Yeah. So, and I interviewed Scott Young, who wrote the book Ultra Learning. I forgot the exact episode. And in it, it's like, he talks about like, when you're planning to learn, like you should make a plan for the learning. And actually, I forgot the percentage, so I'll probably mess this up, but he was like 20% of your time should be just planning it so that you have a framework that you can follow instead of just
Absolutely.
Like, okay. So what's next for the personal finance stuff that you do, right? Because you do have a really great personal finance brand where you're talking about budgeting and you're talking about a lot of like finance things. So do you foresee yourself still doing that and then also doing software engineer or coding stuff, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So it's been nice because my company's a breath of fresh air as it relates to like the personal finance stuff. Cause honestly, it's hard to do the personal finance stuff for compliance reasons as it relates to whatever individual bank you're at, because they usually have policies in place where they say, hey, if you give any type of financial like advice, which I wasn't, but like any personal guidance,
investing, right?
Yeah,
like,
investing. Yeah, you're acting as a direct competitor for them. So it was very hard to make real sense while in that industry. And now it's a great breath of fresh air because my current employer is happy to support all things, loves the fact that I'm passionate about personal finance, and it's just great. I'm super open about it. I said, hey, I gotta come home. I'm gonna do a podcast tonight for my personal finance stuff. But now me and my wife are just, recalibrating and reconciling our goals and figuring out what we want to do next. So one of the big things was to purchase a new car for her, which we just did. We paid it completely in cash, which was very nice to just go to a dealership after, stocking the cars for a little bit. But the next thing is going to be to put our emergency fund in place, build that back up to a very comfortable level. And then just the sky's the limit with investing and trying to really pivot into the FIRE movement now that we've gotten all the baby steps and things out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then because now you have this like new career and skill set, like you said, like there's so many opportunities out there like for you now.
So many. I mean, people are like, hey, can you build me this website? Everybody starts hitting you up.
Can you build me an app? I'm Carmen. I need an app for Journey Launch.
Can you build me an app? Can you fix the printer? I don't know. It's a bunch of stuff.
No, so this is amazing. So I definitely going to link some of the stuff you mentioned here, but please let everyone know where they can follow your journey and learn more about you.
So you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the handle at Make Real Sense, as like the change. So CENTS. So Make Real Sense. And you can also go over to my blog at www.makerealsense.com and subscribe.
Yeah. And so if you're listening to this, screenshot it and like tag Carmen and I like on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you most hang out. Cause I always love seeing when people are listening, and let me know like if you're like, oh, I should be I'm going to switch careers now, or if you got an aha from this. So thank you, Carmen, so much again for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a blast. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Jamila.
I hope you got really inspired and got some actionable tips from Carmen and I's conversation just now. Like I said, I feel like everything happens for a reason. And so I just love how throughout our conversation, we talked about the fact that she was able to get to this dream job of hers by going through all the steps before that she didn't realize connected with one another. And I feel like if you're listening, it's the same thing for you too. You may not ultimately be where you want to be, and that's okay. Every single thing you've done up to this moment has led you to where you want to be. It's leading you there. You just got to trust the process and make the most of the journey. if you're listening to this on your phone in an app, let's say Apple Podcasts, you should be able to just say like read more, and it should give you a description where you can get some links there too. Now, if you are listening to this in Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. I read every single review, and it just really shows me that you're taking out the time to really just give some feedback and really just support the show, because honestly, it matters to me that we have so many reviews. It shows how engaged and amazing my listeners, you journeyers, are with the content. So that helps with future people who maybe want to sponsor the podcast and companies that they see. Like, listen, the Journey to Launch community is engaged and they care and they are enjoying the content. So thank you for doing that. And so even if you don't listen in Apple Podcasts, the best thing you can do is just subscribe however you listen, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify. Just make sure you are staying in tune with the content so that you don't miss a thing. Don't forget, if you want the episode show notes to get any of the links mentioned in this episode, go to journeytolaunch.com or click the description wherever you're listening to this to get the link to the show notes. And if you want that free jumpstart guide to help you on your financial freedom journey, text launch to 33777. Text launch to 33777 to get your free guide today, or go to journeytolaunch.com/jumpstart. If you want to support me and the podcast and love the free content and information that you get here are 4 ways that you can support me and the show. 1, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you listen, whether that's Apple Podcasts, that purple app on your phone, your Android device, YouTube, Spotify, wherever it is that you happen to listen, just subscribe so you are not missing an episode. And if you're happening to listen to this in Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe there. I appreciate and read every single review. Number 2, follow me on my social media accounts. I'm at Journey to Launch on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I love interacting with journeyers there. 3, support and check out the sponsors of this show if you hear something that interests you. Sponsors are the main ways we keep the podcast lights on here, so show them some love for supporting your girl. 4, and last but not least, share this episode, this podcast, with a friend or family member or coworker so that we can spread the message of Journey to Launch. All right, that's it. Until next week, keep on journeying, journeyers.